Okay, so now we're going to make it so that when we search for a keyword, we get 9 random images displayed rather than just the single one we're getting right now. So coincidentally, the Unsplash API provides a count parameter, so we can actually input how many images we want to be returned from that. So our changes are going to start in our root, our default route here. And we are pretty much just essentially going to be naming or changing the names of our variables. So instead of just doing image URL, we're actually going to update it across the board to just image URL array, because we're going to be trying to get back up to 9 values in there. So we're going to have each value in that array. And then we'll also change what we're passing, how we're passing it into the index HTML page using the same image URL array keyword. And then since we're going to be adding a count field to our get random image, which you can see right here, we are going to want to insert how many images we want returned. So for our initial the root route, we just want a single one because that just goes to the background page. And so a 1 suffices for that. And then going down next, we're going to actually look at the search route here. What we're going to be changing, pretty similar in terms of changing the variable name for image URL to be image URL array. We're also going to change it here where we're actually passing it to the HTML page. And then similarly, as we did the 1 for the root route, we're going to add a 9 as the count parameter going into the get random image. So this is going to pass in our keyword, obviously, as well as returning 9 values or 9 images total. Then we're going to want to make changes to our get random image function here. And so like we mentioned, we're adding the count parameter so it can know how many images to return. We're going to want to update our request URL by just adding at the beginning of the parameters here. We'll just add as the first one, add count equals, and then we'll set the value there just like we had set the keyword here. And then you'll want to make sure you put the ampersand after count so it knows to go to the next parameter. Then we're going to change inside the promise. We are going to, change how we're setting the image URL array. We're actually going to just initialize it blank at the beginning instead of just grabbing the value immediately. And then we're going to do a for loop to push the values, the parsed values into the image URL array. And then we will resolve that image URL array. So that's essentially all we're changing in app.js to get the 9 images. Then going into our header file, we're going to want to change it so that instead of just grabbing or setting it to the image URL, we're going to want to set it to the first value of the image URL array. So this will, set the background to the first value returned. So this doesn't matter if we're on the root route, it's going to return 1 value, which we'd grab and display in the background. Or if we're on the search page where it returns 9 images, we would just still grab the first one. And so you'll see that when we search, the first images that pops up also becomes our background. So next, then we're going to make changes in our results file here. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to add a loop where we originally were just setting the image. And so most of this is new, except our image line here stays, I believe, almost exactly the same as it was prior. The name here might be changing, but you can either use just a for loop or a for each method, a JavaScript for each method. Both of these are outlined in the documentation for this assignment, so you can kind of just look at either option and do whichever you'd prefer. So I just did the for each statement, so we're grabbing the image URL array and we're doing for each item in there as image URL, setting the individual object name, and then we're going through and pretty much creating an image for each of those objects inside the image URL array. All right, and then we should be good to go ahead and run the application. So mine is, if I expand it here, already running because we have Nodemon on. So whenever changes in app.js are made, it automatically refreshes it. And then obviously any HTML changes here, you don't need to restart anyway. And so I'm just going to go to our image search page, and we'll just have our simple single background here. And I'm just going to search for dog. And if I go ahead and do that, we'll get 9 dog images displayed to us. And then in just a second, once it loads, we should get this guy, there we go, to fill up the whole background. Next, we're going to want to display the images in a 3x3 table instead of just having a single row of images across of the 9 images. And so along with that, we're actually going to add the favorite icon that we're going to be using to favorite the images. And so it's just a little heart. There's 2 versions of the images, one being just the black outlined heart, and then one being the colored in red heart, meaning that it was favorited. So the documentation for the assignment should have the download for those 2 images, and we're going to want to place those inside our public folder and then inside our image folder here. So you see that I have the 2 different favorite images. So then one change we want to set is we want to identify the public folder as the folder where all the static files are. So that's images, JavaScript, and CSS files. And so to do that in app.js, we're going to add this line here where it essentially is pretty self-explanatory. It's telling you to use the public folder as the static, where the static files are. And then we're going to want to make an actual adjustment to our results file, which is where the images are being displayed, all 9 of them. So if we go into our results image, we changed a few things along here. Obviously, this new image here, we are just adding the favorite icon to be added with a width of 20. So that's just going to be right next to our image for each image. And then we're adding here what I believe, I'm going to butcher the name, but it's a ternary operator, or ternary operator. And what this will do, it will, every 3 images or loops through this for each statement, it's going to add a line break. And so this will give us, so it places 3 images, and then it breaks, places 3 more, breaks, places 3 more, which gives you the 3x3 table. All right, so after making these changes, we should be good to go ahead and run. And so from our search here, if I just do cat and search, you'll see we'll get the 3x3 shape for the images as well as our background image loading in.